project was kind of initially conceived by Brad Miska, who's a buddy of ours. He'd worked with us on a film called A Horrible Way to Die. And so when he first kind of started to have the idea of wanting to do something with an ongoing overall narrative that was a bunch of found footage shorts, the first people he reached out to were Adam and me, just because of Horrible Way to Die, which at the time we were pretty happy with.
Well, that did great. I remember that was at Fantastic Fest 2010, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it won the audience award for best film.
It did not win the audience
award.
award.
Sorry.
It won best horror screenplay. And AJ Bowen and Amy Simons won Best Actor and
actor
and Actress.
That was much buzzed about because I was there. So.
It did win awards here. It did do really well for us, like both financially and critically. So it was a really positive experience. We made it for also very little money, like under $100,000, and so it was also kind of Brad realized that we were people that could not just that he creatively agreed with, but people that could competently make a film for very little money.
Right.
So he started talking to us about it, and right away I kind of liked the idea of it being a feature-length horror anthology and us doing the wraparound, so we could kind of guide the overall project and assemble the feature film ultimately. But the other filmmakers would have their self-contained things, and also I just feel like wraparounds and horror anthologies are always terrible. They're always what you get up and go to the bathroom during, which I don't think we solved that problem. but we like kind of challenges, and Adam and I specifically like working with stuff that we think could be done better.
Right.
We tend to be inspired by things that we're disappointed by, rather than trying to emulate films that we like, which is how most filmmakers work. We tend to try to see what we don't like and try to think of how you could do something that kind of delivers that level of entertainment completely differently, which was actually the genesis of The Horrible Way to Die. Was Adam's a big fan of serial killer films, and I'm not. And he really wanted to do one, and I was like, I can't think of a new way to tell that story, beyond what's already been done by David Fincher and John McNaughton. And then by having that conversation, I was like, oh, actually, I can think of like one original way to do it, and that's what we tried to do. Same with Your Next, actually. And so with VHS, we were really looking at found footage stuff, and some of it I think is wonderful. I'm not a found footage hater. I actually tend to enjoy found footage short films overall. I think they're great. I think you can be really creative within that environment, but it was also like, what are all these movies doing? That we can do something different with. What is becoming boring or stale about this?
Because it seems like every other week now there is a found footage type film almost coming out. These days.
Yeah, and that trend doesn't seem like it's going to come to a stop anytime soon. No. Not with movies like Devil Inside, making a fortune even though every living human being hates it.
Yes.
And look, I thought Paranormal Activity 3 actually was fantastic.
No, I think it may have been best in the series, possibly.
It might be. The first one was galvanizing when I first saw it. I was at the world premiere at Screamfest back in 2007, and I knew nothing about it going in. There were like 20 people there. The director was there, but he was too shy to say anything.
Yeah.
And then years later, it became this huge hit. But it was so cool seeing it and knowing nothing about it. But then Paranormal 3 I thought was great because, and we'd already shot VHS, and VHS was pretty much done by the time I saw Paranormal 3. But I thought it did something kind of similar, which is it's like, okay, you get it.
Right.
You know what's going to happen, so we don't need a 30-minute first act of people looking at curtains. We can just get on with it.
Right.
And that was definitely what we wanted to do with VHS. When we looked at what other found footage movies were doing, they had very slow first acts. They spend way too much time trying to explain why people are filming everything.
Right.
Let's just get on with it. And the directors on VHS all had total creative control. They had final cut on their projects. They had to get notes from us and everyone. Roxanne Benjamin and Brad Miska and Zach Zeman, gave creative notes. Gary Binko, another guy up there at Salient. They all gave notes, and Adam and I gave notes, but they didn't have to take our notes.
Right.
And which is one of the reasons the movie's 2 hours long.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't feel it to the credit of everybody involved. It didn't.
Well, it feels like it to us because we've seen it 50 times.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. That's actually, it's nice to hear that because I can't be objective about it.
Sure.
I know that with Your Next, we literally were are still trying to cut some seconds out of that movie to make it tighter. But with VHS, that's just not even an option because of what it is. So all the filmmakers had total creative control, and I think the only real guidelines were, we really wanted it to feel authentic. We didn't. Paranormal Activity 3, I've complimented it. I will now diss Paranormal Activity 2. which does many things that I dislike immensely. But one of the things it does is it's clearly shot very professionally, and then they've degraded the footage to try to make it look amateur. So it's clearly shot with like a red camera and professional like Zeiss lenses or something, and then they're trying to make it look like consumer cameras. It's like why
it up a whole bunch of ad tracking or whatever.
And it doesn't look right. Even I think you know, I mean, you don't have to like. I majored in like photography and stuff, so I get really annoyed by that stuff. But I think even the average viewer like sees that as fake. They know what a camcorder, they know what iPhone footage looks like or camcorder footage looks like, and they see Paranormal 2D2 and they know it doesn't look right. It has, you know, they're lighting the hell out of everything to give it like a long depth of field, you know, sort of look like a consumer camera. It's just like, hey, I've got an idea. Shoot it with a consumer camera. Save about $5 million, and it'll look better. But they don't. But studios obviously don't have the confidence to shoot their beloved franchise movie on actual consumer cameras. Which actually I do think they should. However they did Paranormal 3, they did a very good job. But you know, no studio is going to let you shoot, you know, a film that they want to make $200 million on a camera like that.
Right.
But they should. They actually should. If it's a found footage movie, because it feels authentic. The camera has like all kinds of cool leverage and like latitude with the lights, and so right away we knew we actually wanted to shoot this thing on VHS, on what the characters were supposed to be shooting it on, and so basically that was it. We just wanted it to feel very authentic, and fast-paced, and just basically we just wanted them to do something that hadn't been done before.
Speaking of which, I can imagine as a writer it being challenging for having a wraparound segment to kind of build the characters that you had. How much? I mean, for what was it, four guys? I think that were going into the house.
4 guys. Yeah.
And I mean, how much did you really kind of put into the script, or did you have more kind of an outline of who they were, or how did that?
It's funny because I wrote both the first segment of VHS that shot and the last, which was Joe Somberg's Skype one. And Joe, as an experiment, did the script verbatim, which I never had anyone do before. Adam and I got very loose with the improvisation on the wraparound, which I think found footage lends itself to kind of spontaneous style. There was a script. But I also, like we were just talking about, I knew that one thing I didn't want was a lot of exposition. I knew I wanted it to just hit the ground running. So the funny thing is, of the 2 segments that I wrote in VHS, one other guy that we were just talking to was saying that both those feel like there's information that's not there, you know, that there's like a deeper mythology, and that's true. But you have to make a choice. I feel like viewers are savvy to. If you watch something a couple times, you can get what's going on because the information is there. It's just being hinted at rather than we're just making up a bunch of stuff because we're lazy storytellers. Hopefully, I can't imagine anyone watching VHS more than once. But if they do, actually, someone did. Someone told us that like they'd seen it like 3 times. Like, and I was just like, wow.
I would like to see it at least once more.
Oh, there you go.
Just to maybe try and pick up on stuff I may have missed.
There you go. I mean, Ty originally had kind of tried to link his segment with the wraparound kind of thematically, and then we made some cuts to the wraparound, and he lost. So that was lost. I mean, there was an effort at a deep mythology and to make these guys real characters, but mostly the fact is real characters don't come out like characters in horror movies do and tell you everything about themselves and their history. And like, hey, remember when Mom died? And we went to live with Dad for 5 years? You don't say that to anyone because you both know that, so you would never say those words. But characters in horror movies are constantly spouting off about their shared histories. So it was pretty important to us that the guys in the wraparound just be kind of like you know, you get a feel of their personalities, but they never talk about themselves or what they're doing really. Now, one thing we didn't really reflect on is how having characters like that you don't really know and are kind of alienated from because they're terrible people and idiots. That we kind of, I feel like one thing that that one mistake that we made is it's easy to lose viewer involvement. If you cut away from these guys for 25 minutes, and then, for the Grand Canyon short or something, and then you cut back to them, the audience is kind of like, oh yeah, these guys. Like they're not that invested in them. But we wanted to do something fairly aggressive and alienating, and that was kind of the experiment. Having done that, I think. You know, if we were to do this again, or if we were to, continue in this world, which I think we'd like to, I think one thing I would do differently is I would maybe not make the character. I would make the characters more relatable and identifiable. Because I mean, you literally don't even know who they are in their names. Adam is one of the main characters of the wraparound, and you only see his face for like a second. and we were trying to do that on purpose because we wanted it to feel very, like I said, very different, very authentic.
Sure.
That let viewers know right away that we weren't that we weren't pandering to them, that that we were trying to entertain them while still doing something a little experimental. But I think parts of that experiment were not totally successful.
Sure. Well, you talked about,
but that also is why when it came time to put together an idea for the last segment, the one that I wrote for Jay, I knew that I wanted it to be very stable and just a man and a woman in a relationship. You know exactly who they are. The camera's like locked down most of the time because it's all recorded with laptops. It's the webcam conversation. I knew that I'd already seen that we alienated people enough, and we needed something that was like clearly relatable with characters that the audience could imprint on right away. So I think ideally I'd split the difference.
Right. Well, and with that Skype segment, was that just another idea that you came up with, as part of the genesis of this project, or is it something you kind of thought of before? Or?
I had never actually thought of it before. I do understand that we're not the first film to do that. I believe there is someone has brought up to me that there's I think a film called The Collingswood Story does something very similar.
Okay. I've not heard of it.
Yeah, it's a few years old, but it was more like the challenge of making a film like VHS, and it's what excited us about it is how do you tell found footage stuff in a new way? What are the reasons people would be filming themselves and recording themselves that you don't have to spend a lot of time explaining, but don't fall apart? And I knew right away. Brad had wanted to do. I don't want to get into spoiler territory, but Brad had kind of an interesting idea, and I had then the idea that if you told it like a haunted house story. And I'd actually been in a long-distance relationship for about 6.5 years. Okay. And my girlfriend and I would, we would Skype every night. And she lived in New York and I lived in LA. And that relationship had just ended like about a year earlier. And so I'd always kind of had the idea of telling a movie that way, and there is a relatable feeling of powerlessness, if you're in a long-distance relationship and your girlfriend gets on and she has a cold and you want to be there to make her chicken soup and you can't. So I love the idea of a guy who's in a long-distance relationship and his girlfriend is in a house that she thinks is haunted, and scary things are happening to her, and he's 1,000 miles away. And can't do anything and just has to kind of watch. And then obviously the characters are very disaffected, and there's a lot of humor in that. We don't play it totally seriously, and then obviously there's a bunch of twists, some of which probably only make sense if you watch it like a dozen times. But yeah, I mean, the idea of doing it with Skype, and then actually what's another curious thing is Joe had just finished doing a film. Joe Swanberg, who directed that segment, had just finished doing a film called Amateurs, which has a whole webcam.
Oh wow!
So he actually knew exactly technically how to do that. When I first came to him and started talking about it, I was like, and I think we'll nail like DSLR cameras to 2x4s, and we'll have to mic the actors in like a specific way so they can hear each other and interact, and we're not picking up. And he was like, well, or we could just film it with no cameras and just record it straight off the computers in HD, and just actually have them actually doing the web chat. And I was like, that would be authentic.
Well, and then you avoid having to put in the pixelated blocks and everything else. I mean, occur due to a bad connection or whatever the case may be.
There was actually a moment where the studio got really frustrated with us because they were like, can we shift? Let's just shift his little box. And we're like, we did. That's not a special effect. We actually filmed this movie with no cameras. Straight to laptops. So. Excuse me.
No, that's fine.
The idea for that came from being in a long-distance relationship myself and having spent so much time in various website interfaces. But then it just all came together in that Joe had already experimented with making films in that format. And ultimately, we filmed Helen, the actress, up on the second story of an apartment, and James, the actor, was like downstairs. So they were in the same building, but you couldn't pick up their sound. And it just technically it presented some challenges. The film that segment of the film is actually going to look a little different on home video than it looks like in theaters because of the way the image is. But it was just kind of a fun idea, and I think I would almost like to explore that further. The idea of just but it was also just something. It was just something I hadn't seen. And that was really it. It was something I had not seen done, and it seemed as soon as I thought of it, I was like, oh man, this is so obvious. How could nobody's done this before? Like one of these paranormal movies or something like. And if you're in a long-distance relationship and like your girlfriend's disrobing, you know, it made sense that he would record it,
right.
and then these collectors would put it on VHS, these people that are like finding evidence of supernatural. So it all just kind of came together. But like I said, I do believe there's another film that's done it first, and it is called The Collingswood Story. So I hereby give it a shout out. I don't know.
We'll have to check it out.
I don't know.
But I would like to see possibly that segment.
It would be great if all my ideas were totally original. But apparently there's other films out there.
Well, speaking of,
I'm so proud of it. And in terms of expanding on that idea, I mean, I do think that's something we've talked about.
Yeah.
You know,
I think pretty much almost everything in VHS could possibly be taken a little bit further.
I think at this point we definitely know that that's something we want to get into somewhere down the road, but we're not quite sure where that's going to be yet.
Right. Two final questions for you before I let you go. One is, you talked about being challenged. You and Adam, you guys are building up a pretty strong reputation in the indie horror, field, I feel.
Cool.
And, if you were to be challenged, what if somebody like, say, Paramount were to approach you and say, hey, we want you to do Paranormal 5? Do you think that's something you'd possibly do, or?
I don't think we would. Simply because I just don't think we're the right people for that job.
Right.
I just creatively, I feel like they've done a pretty good job with that, and we don't have a lot to add to that conversation.
Right.
I mean, look, we love Paramount, we love the paranormal series, but I just don't think we'd be the right people for that. I can't. They're doing a pretty good job with it on their own. I think Adam and I want to do things that no one could do better than us.
Right.
Like that's kind of like one of the guidelines of how we took projects. It's like no one is better suited to do this project than we are because we have ideas that no one else will have. Paranormal Activity 5, we probably would do an okay. We'd probably do a good job. We're good filmmakers, but would we be the best? Probably not.
And then,
one more.
Yeah, one more. Okay.
Okay.
And final in closing, anything else to share with your fans? What's up next? Anything?
I don't think I have any fans. I mean, if I do, that's awesome. Adam and I think right now we're feeling slightly burned out on horror, and to avoid becoming total hacks, we're going to do some different genres and then come back to horror. So,
awesome.
I mean, just because, look at all the great horror filmmakers,
right.
and look at how many bad movies they've made, and you can see why. It's because
Burnout.
we're at a point in our career where people will take a chance on us doing non-horror stuff, and I think that our next couple projects, well, one is going to be kind of genre-y, but I think we're going to dabble in some different genres before we come back to hardcore horror, because we actually haven't really made a horror movie yet.
Right.
We have an indie horror reputation based on all these weird hybrids.
Right.
You're Next and VHS and A Horror Way to Die especially is not really a horror film.
Just easy to group into a genre.
Yeah, but that's what we like to do. But I think we would like to do a true horror film, like a real supernatural, like ghost story that's terrifying. But I think before we do that, we need to kind of recharge our batteries by doing doing a romantic comedy or something.
That sounds
I'm 100% serious. So.
That's great. Well, continued success.
Thank you.
We look forward to that change, and thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.